Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Now we're back. It's always great to have Knesset member Yitzchak Pindrus. He was former mayor Beitar Elite when I interviewed him many years ago. He's with United Torah Judaism, where he serves in the Knesset. So wonderful to have you back again. How are you doing?
The situation in Israel isn't easy. I mean, the situation is a difficult situation. You wake up in the morning and there's another soldier and another almona and more Yisayimim and soldiers that are falling. The Hamas is still there in Gaza. They weren't wiped out. We're hoping for Yeshua Hashem. We're hoping that our soldiers will be matzliach to wipe his Sinuara, wipe his soldiers away, and there should be atzlacha.
Amen.
And with the least damage and families that are soldiers that are falling over there.
Now, what is the consensus? Because the prime minister is in a difficult position. The hostages and the families of the hostages want their family members released. And at the same time, the prime minister wants to eradicate Hamas. And this seems to be, in a way, it's contradictory because they're saying ceasefire, let's get our family back home. Prime minister says, I want to get the family members back home, but I got to eradicate Hamas.
The truth of the matter is that it's not. It's emotionally very difficult to understand it, but it's not true. It's not things that contradict. The Hamas are not volunteers that want to let out the hostages. Okay, the Hamas wants to keep on being strong, and the Hamas, the only way that he's going to let out hostages, he's going to be pressured and feeling that he's losing everything. Without a real army pressure and Hamas feeling that they're falling apart, that there's nothing going to be left of them, they won't let out the hostages. And that's something. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for families to understand because families, and I really feel what they want. Okay, they know that every minute that goes through, the less chances that their family will come back alive. And that's something that's very difficult for a person, any human being to face. Okay, we're talking about animals, but those animals, without being pressured, the hostages can't be. So that's why it's not a steer. I mean, both things are true. We have to push the Hamas and make sure bringing back the hostages. And yes, every hour makes it more difficult or hard. We know these people are not human. We saw that on Simchas Torah. And hopefully, Israel has no other choice. They have to wipe out the Hamas and make sure the hostages come back.
Now, how much of a factor is the world community, including the United States, say restrained, pause? And the United States has been strong for the most part, but Europe and the other countries say ceasefire, and Israel is the barbarians. You know, look at all the propaganda that they're hurling against Israel. Does that have any impact on you as a Knesset member and as far as the war going on?
The answer is no. What does affect is the pressure of the United States for a humanitarian, bringing in gas and bringing in food and things like that, which, of course, makes it more difficult to pressure on the Hamas, because when the Hamas has gas coming in and has food coming in, there's less pressure. So that, of course, is an issue. But I understand, what we understand is that we have no choice. So we're trying to play between the borders, not to tear really what the United States is backing Israel, okay? At the end of the day, the last 2.5 months, 3 months, the United States is backing Israel, what they're doing. So there's a price to it. The price is letting in all these things into Gaza, which we would prefer not to. But that is the price, and I think it's a price that we have no other choice, and we have to pay it as long as we know that the goal of wiping out the Hamas is a goal that the United States agrees with, and that's why we could agree to compromise on the letting in trucks into Gaza.
Is there something that I'm missing? Because from what I've read, and you know better than I, that Hamas has stored so much oil and food in their tunnels. And even now, when relief is coming in, they're stealing fuel, they're stealing food. So doesn't anybody pay attention that these terrorists are not only stealing, but they have stockpiles? So I know the pressure is strong in Israel, and Israel wants to help out and capitulate to the world community. But doesn't anybody care about the facts that I just mentioned?
Like I said, if it would be depending on Israel itself, we would say no to all these trucks. Also for the reasons you said, and also for the reason for pressuring Hamas more, and getting them to collapse before earlier than what it's going to take with letting in these trucks. Because, like you said, they're stealing, they're killing, they're using it for their causes, they're using it in the tunnels. And of course, without electricity and gas, it'll be more difficult for them to survive. But those are decisions that Israel has to make and compromise, as long as we make sure that the goal it doesn't change. So yeah, it is a price that we're paying.
Now, what about the unity? There's before Simchas Torah, there was division. After Simchas Torah, so much unity in Israel. How is that holding out? Is it still there to the same extent it was on October the 8th? Because it's dealing with money to yeshivas and draft, etc. Are there fissures in that unity, and at least in the government is concerned, dealing with issues like, for example, compensation for yeshivas?
The truth of the matter is the unity is still there, of course, in the nation. Okay, forget the politicians that make a living out of fighting, because if we won't fight, so who needs us? But yes, at the end of the day, if you're talking about, if you walk down in Israel, the majority, and I would say 80-90% of Israel wants the unity, doesn't want these fights, doesn't want these things. Yes, people use it. I mean, the story with you brought a terrible example. The example of the yeshiva's budget, where we're talking about 200 or 300 million shekels, when the budget that was needed was 30 billion shekels. So everybody knows that if you talk about facts, the 200 million shekels is not going to save the Israeli budget, okay, or 300 million, let's say. That's not going to save and people try to use it, to gain points in their political world. But I think by the end of the day, the majority, if the Israeli people don't like it, they don't want to hear about it. And that's why we see the polls that all those parties that are running those battles are not even going to see the next Knesset if you go by the polls today. Okay, it's mostly the Labor Party. Even the Yesh Atid party is going down on the polls. The more they make noise because people don't like it. Yes, people want to see more united in Israel. People think that part of what we went through was the Actus, and that we weren't together. And you see more and more people are trying to do things together with Knesset members, the opposition, the coalition, working together. And these are things that are happening.
Do you see the government maintaining itself once the war comes to a close? Because they're saying that they expect a lot of people and Knesset members and the prime minister to resign. Do you see that happening?
The truth of the matter is, no one could tell you how the political world is going to look like the day after the war. And it depends on two major things. Of course, if, let's say, Alavai, in a month from now, okay, Sinwar is wiped out together with Def and all his friends, and Israel has succeeded in wiping out the main infrastructure of the Hamas, okay? And in Lebanon, Hezbollah has removed from the borders. I don't see Israel going out now for elections after the main goal came down. If there's going to be any kind of pressure or things are not going to work out in that way, of course, no one's going to give any discount to a government that failed on October 7th, failed on wiping out the Hamas. So there's going to be a big problem in keeping on the government. So it really depends what's going to happen, how we're going to go through this difficult times. And the better we go through that, the more chances is that the government is going to remain.
Do you have any idea, or does the Knesset members have any information as to what exactly transpired on October 7th, how there was such a breach, how there was so much a failure on Israel's behalf on that day?
I think people know. I mean, in the news, that people know that the intelligence didn't bring up to the government or even to the higher levels of the army of what they think is going to be. There was a lack in that. There was a lack in a lot of areas. Okay, people were built on a concept that the Hamas wants to run a country and a government, and that's why they're not going to commit suicide. That was a mistake. I think people ran away to deer because it was easier to think, because to think that these people are such animals are so stupid that they're willing to commit suicide, and just for nothing. Because if you see Gaza now, Gaza didn't gain anything. The Palestinians didn't gain anything. They were the most damage of what happened. Okay, if Israel has 2,000 people that were Rahman al-Islam killed, the Palestinians you're talking about officially 20, 30,000. I believe it's about 50, 60,000. They don't really have all the numbers. Right, buildings that fell down. You see Gaza's, at least north of Gaza, is wiped out. So they did a big damage to the Palestinian people. And it doesn't make sense. And people try to think in ideas that make sense. And that's where Israel fell. And I believe it'll be investigated and people won't have to pay for it.
Our guest is Knesset member Yitzchak Zev Pindrus of the United Torah Judaism. Has UTJ, your party, changed its attitude towards the army? Because I think we're seeing more of a love. You see Charedim and Chassidim, for example, giving and dancing with Israeli soldiers. Is there a new respect since Simchas Torah?
There was, I think it's also a lack a little bit of people trying to use it politically. There was never anything in at least in our party, and me myself, I went to Shlav Bet. There was never anything against people going to the army. It was against a yeshiva bacher that wants to sit and learn. He should have the opportunity to sit and learn and not go to the army, and that's something that's to continue. And we'll continue talking about it after the war will be all over. But that's not something that's going to change. Of course, when you're more needed, always people volunteer more. It happens in all types of communities. Of course, in the Haredi community, that's built on volunteering and helping. So whatever is needed is helping, and we're always there. And that was the need now, and people volunteered.
But you don't see, from what I'm hearing, is that people are saying after this is over, they expect there being less military exemption for yeshiva students. So I'm sure you're hearing that in Israel too.
I think they also know it's not going to change. It's not going to happen. What didn't happen in the last 75 years. Whoever wants to sit and learn and wants the opportunity to sit and learn will have that opportunity. Whoever is not is going to have to serve in the army.
But I know UTJ is not anti-army, but isn't there more of a respect? There's more of a feeling where people who
there was always a respect. Trying to say that UTJ didn't respect soldiers and didn't respect the army. No, I'm saying I'm not saying on you. I'm saying I know what the atmosphere we're talking about. What people trying to say. It's for sure not true today, and I think that people did respect, that are going to continue to respect, and it has nothing to do with the idea. Is, like I said, in the Jewish state, there should be an ability for people that want to sit and learn only, that could sit and learn. People that want to do it together, do it. It has the yeshivot, and the people that want to sit and learn could sit and learn. And people that don't have to serve it, do what they have to do.
No, I hear you. You mentioned Lebanon before and Hezbollah, and the consensus is as bad and terrible Hamas is, Hezbollah is a lot worse. They have the backing of Iran. They're more sophisticated missiles. They're testing Israel. And I spoke to Michael Owen, for example, who says that we have 300,000 soldiers on reserve. Israel should also be taking care of Hezbollah. If they don't do it today, they'll have to do it a year from now or 2 years from now. It's not a question of if, but when. The United States doesn't want Israel to engage in other battles aside from what's happening in Gaza. Want to get your perspective? Should Israel be more forceful with Hezbollah?
I think let's talk about two facts that are the first facts. Okay, fact number one: there can't be any terrorist group on borders of Israel. That's something that we all learn the Simchas Torah, which means you can't have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 Ardoan Hezbollah guys sitting in Kiryat Shmona. That's something that we can't live with one day. That's something that we can't live with. We can't tell our residents, go back and live in Kiryat Shmona, in Metula, or in Shlomi, when they have these terrorists, okay, and 1-2 kilometers from them, that they could just get into a Toyota, just like those Hamas guys got in, and get to your house. That's something that no one could accept. Now, the issue is different. Because the issue is, because over there is different, it's different rules. We're talking about a country. Lebanon is a country. Hamas wasn't a country. Hamas was a terrorist organization. Lebanon is a country. And Lebanon has to have an interest that they should be destroyed and look like Gaza. And that has to make sure, they have to make sure that Hezbollah people are not, at least in the first 10, 15 kilometers in the area of the border.
Well, who's gonna make sure of that? Because Hezbollah doesn't want to move. Who's going to ensure that?
France, United States, and Lebanon itself. Lebanon knows that they're not going to continue because they're going to be wiped out and look like they're going to look like north of Gaza if they don't make sure Hezbollah moves. So the international world is going to have to do it. If it's not going to happen, yes, so Israel's going to have to react. And react means showing that Beirut can't exist if Hezbollah is in South Lebanon. Beirut doesn't exist if they're south of Gaza. So yeah, we'll finish with Hamas and make sure that if France can't explain it to them, the United States can't explain it to them, Lebanon can't explain it to herself, we're going to have no choice and we're going to have to do it. But like I said, it's a different type of issue. It's not like Hamas that says, okay, who cares? Let Gaza be wiped out and all the Palestinians be killed. The main thing is that we killed a couple Jews.
Now, here's the thing, though. Hezbollah is testing Israel daily. They're sending rockets, and Israel's retaliating. So the question is at what point does the escalation of Hezbollah make Israel take a much stronger position than it has right now by just striking targets in Lebanon?
No, what Israel is doing is slice by slice. What they're doing is one thing. They're responding to each missile that's been thrown from north, but they're not opening, like I said, a war that's wiping out Beirut, okay? That's something that's going to happen after we finish with Hamas. It's more correct for Israel, even military, not to do both together. To finish with Hamas. Over there, I'm not saying every attack is answered by attack. Things are happening over there. But the strategy is to make sure that there's no Beirut. If there's Hezbollah over there, that's something that could be done only after we finish Hamas.
Now, what about the Houthis in Yemen?
If we have a choice. And I didn't say only. I said if we have a choice. If we won't have a choice, meaning Hezbollah is going to go up that. So, yes, we're going to have to do both together.
I saw that. And what about the Houthis in Yemen? They're also sending missiles. How should Israel be dealing with that situation? That's the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
It's not
We're speaking.
It's not something that I could say Israel can't live with. Like I said, a couple thousand terrorists, they can walk in the game that doesn't get a lot. Trying to tease us that we should get and be busy with it. I don't think we should let all the nations do it. They need the water to be open. There's other nations that could do it. We don't. So they're trying to tease us. I don't think that we have to buy it and get into it and be busy with it.
Now, one of the things that was affecting Israel in a major way before Simchas Torah, October 7th, was judicial reform. Is that dead when this is all over?
I believe that's not on the top priorities now in Israel. I mean, Israel has a lot more bigger challenges now to take care of. And like I said, and being united is a challenge that we have to do. I don't think that we, of course, not the right-wing coalition has to bring up things that are bringing into fights that are not necessary right now. Just like I said about the yeshivas, I don't think it's right to start now and to deal with their budget. Things that we've been fighting 75 years, we could leave them aside. There's bigger challenges that we have to take care of now.
So the real question as we close out, so how do we maintain, and God willing, we're hoping any day now, but it's going to be months, right, before this really is over, if the world lets and America lets Israel go through and do what it has to do in Gaza. The question is going to be if Hamas will still exist in some format, and they're already talking with the Palestinian Authority that they should be the
No
ones
way.
regulating, right? They should
No
be.
way. No way the Hamas could be involved or exist, okay, after this is solved. If we do that, we just didn't learn anything. Nothing in Sukkot.
So, is there any plan? Who would be controlling Gaza?
Let them appoint anyone they want to try to give them sword and to try to collect the garbage over there and to try to take care of the welfare over there. The army can't leave Gaza for the next couple years. Everyone that just thinks about it understands that and knows the army can't leave. They have to stay. Who's going to supply the sword? Let Egypt, Saudi Arabia, or any Palestinian bureaucracy. Who cares? The army has to be there and can't leave.
Now, one of the problems that has been in the papers, and you're familiar with it, is that a lot of money from Qatar, especially Israel, allowed millions upon millions of dollars to go in. The thinking was, as you said earlier, that Hamas is interested in just maintaining the status quo, just throwing some rockets here and there, but not fighting Israel. Was that a mistake in retrospect? All the millions of dollars that Israel let in?
The concept that Hamas could run the civilian life in Gaza was a mistake. Okay, part of the concept, if you're running a civilian life and you want to give services, you need money. You can't give services without money. There's no way you can get services. But that was part of the concept. Okay, that concept is over. Everybody understands that can't work.
And will Israel go after the money? Because you have the leadership that was in Qatar. I think they went to Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. They have billions upon billions of dollars that they personally.
The Hamas has to be wiped out wherever they are. It doesn't make a difference if they're in Turkey or in Qatar or in Syria or in Iran or everywhere. Hamas has to be wiped out after this is over.
Well, hopefully Israel will have the chance to do that. Final question. You mentioned the unity is wonderful. I'd love to see it. The question is there any plans in place that people working on to make sure this unity continues when the conflict is over?
It depends by the end of the day of people. It's not like what we were talking about before. It's not sword. It's not collective. It depends on people. And people have to make sure that even if sometimes more convenient to get up on TV and to attack, and
We're speaking with the member of Knesset, Yitzchak Pindrus. Go ahead, Deputy. Go ahead, member of Knesset. Can you hear me? Okay. Yitzchak Pindrus has been our guest.
Yeah, I hear you. So I'm saying it depends by the end of the day on the people, and that's what the.
And hopefully Israel will continue with that. Everybody on both right and left, secular religions, will be able to say, I want to work together, work out the problems, and have more that unites us and divides us. Easier said than done. I'm hoping that the unity will continue, because after the Yom Kippur War, there was unity and we degraded. I'm hoping we learned our lesson for the Yom Kippur War. Anyway, Knesset member Yitzchak Pindrus, thank you for joining us. Look forward to having you back again very soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.